Okay, we'll just get started here. So, thanks for being in here. So I just want to introduce myself. I'm Dawn. Here's more. I'm Dawn. So I'm now Dawn's Dirt. I'm on social media. I've got a podcast going, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, um, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the things. And so I used to be a farmer. I still am a farmer. I owned a 36,000 square foot greenhouse down by Carstairs, Alberta, and I sold my farm a year and a half ago, and I landed on a little property here, about an acre I have access to. And yeah, so I've turned from farmer to actually an online coach, an online business coach, an online farming and homesteading business coach. And I do garden coaching as well. And so this is my new path. Lots of people are still rolling in here. So this is my new path in life. And so really excited to be here, really excited to share my story with you so that you can learn from it. And yeah, I want to tell you right now that I'm not just going to blow smoke and mirrors at you. I'm going to tell you some of the positives, and I'm also going to tell you some of the negatives as well. So I can't sit here and say I did this right and this right and this right and I never did anything wrong, and because the best way to learn is hindsight is 2020, and I can tell you some of the things that I've made mistakes on and some of the things that I've done wrong and some of the things that I've done right. And yeah, I was quite successful for a very long time. And so yeah, that's just what I want to say. Like, it's just not all perfect all the time, and I'm not here to say that I am perfect, because I'm not. um so I also want to tell you that I love questions. Now I got to figure out how to I'm going to go like that, because then I want to see the chat. So if you're just rolling in here, oh, Tracy's going to put some pictures in the chat of my former farm and things like that. So just keep an eye on the chat. So if you're just joining now as well, put into the chat where you're from and how much land you've got access to. And so really excited to learn about that. Also in the chat, I love interaction. So right now I see mostly a black screen. Can everyone hear me? I just want to make sure that people can hear me. Oh yeah, you can, because you're putting your things in the chat. Perfect. Me and technology. I know how to do farming. Technology is not my strong suit. Anyway, I love it. Thank you, Tina. So put your questions in the chat. So I love being not interrupted, but I love back and forth. I love conversation. I love hearing the questions in the chat and, seeing if we can tie them in, because, this is interactive. This is not just me talking. This is, you learning, and this is a connection and a relationship as well. So yeah, we'll just get into it. So I want to start, just go back up to my childhood. So I was raised near Airdrie, Alberta. My parents, I was born in Calgary, and then we moved to Airdrie, outside of Airdrie, Alberta. And my parents had their first small greenhouse. So it was just teeny tiny. I don't know, maybe 6, 8, 10,000 square feet. I don't remember. They were in a partnership with someone, and they did that greenhouse for a couple years. They grew long English cucumbers, and they brought them to the warehouse. And I can remember as a child being in the greenhouse playing and, helping and working. And my mom was working, and they used to ship cucumbers in the back of an old station wagon. And sometimes my mom had, I think she had 4 children at that point, and she would ship cucumbers into Calgary. And so she'd load them all in the back of her station wagon, and we'd have to like sit in cracks and crevices, because there wasn't always room for us children in the vehicle to get those cucumbers into town. And it was pretty fun. That was my childhood. And then they moved from that place to another place outside of Airdrie, and they started out on their own. They had a 26,000 square foot greenhouse, and they again grew long English cucumbers, and they sent them to the wholesaler. And that was my childhood. I worked in the greenhouse. I went camping sometimes in the summer with my mom, but for the most part, like, we were home. We worked on the farm. We had the greenhouse, and we did cucumbers. So fast forward to 2007. So I got married earlier to that, and I got married to a man, and he wanted to be a farmer. And we were looking into agriculture, and we were looking into dairy farming, or we were looking into greenhouse, and we were kind of debating our pros and cons. And at that point in time, in 2007, it was probably 2006 when we were planning. Um, Greenhouse was slightly cheaper to get into. I'd love to have a greenhouse, but I worry about the snow. So I had a plastic greenhouse and I had snow, and there's ways to do it, Jane. So we went into greenhouse because the debt load on the greenhouse was going to be about 600,000, whereas the debt load on a dairy farm was going to be over 1 million. And so just making a business decision that way. So we built this 36,000 square foot greenhouse. So at that time, we were slightly small, but not super small for the big greenhouse industry. And what I mean by the big greenhouse industry is where we would pick and we would grow our crops. We were going to grow cucumbers just like my parents did. And we were going to pick our cucumbers and we were going to send them to the wholesaler, to the big warehouse in Calgary, and make a good living at it. So we were slightly small, but the tactician numbers still penciled out. And so we got going into it. However, it was my family's business. And so my ex-husband's learning curve was straight up and down, actually. And so that posed like that was pretty crazy, that just learning how to do this. He actually grew up on a dairy farm, and I grew up in the greenhouse industry. So my parents were trying to help us, and the first year we almost lost our entire crops. We had the bug thrip. I don't know if anyone on here knows what the bug thrip is, but we had thrip so bad, pests so bad in the greenhouse that we basically almost lost our crop. And instead of making thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, I think we made $1,500 in the month of July. Instead of making thousands and thousands and thousands that we needed, we made $1,500. And so like that almost killed us. And so farming is hard. And so we were growing food for people, so that's farming. And so eventually my dad passed away, so he was our consultant. He was helping us, and eventually we kind of got our wings under us. We were doing the wholesale thing. We didn't have a bad July like we did that year for the next year. And so things started trickling through, but it was still really hard. And then I went to my first farmer's market. So we only had cucumbers in the greenhouse at that point. And I went to my first farmer's market in Olds, Alberta, and I was selling my cucumbers, my ugly cucumbers. They had a little curl in them, but they were perfect cucumbers, like to eat, but they didn't look perfect straight for the grocery store. And I was selling our number twos, and I was selling them at I want to say 50 cents a piece or something like that. But what I learned through that, so it's too cheap, too cheap. But the lesson I learned in that is, wow, people were paying me the money for it, and I was cash only. I was only accepting cash. So where did that cash go? That was back in 2007. No, that was probably in 2008 or 2009. So I mean, if we get audited at this point, I think that's past. But that cash just went straight into our pockets, and paid some coffee money at the end of the day. And so that was my first farmer's market. And later in that season, we had a few tomatoes ready, and so I brought some tomatoes to the market, and people went, "These tomatoes are the best tomatoes we've ever had." And so we made the business decision the next year to grow a few more tomatoes. So we planted a couple of rows of tomatoes, and I did 2 farmers markets in a week. So I did Olds Farmers Market and I did Three Hills Farmers Market. And next thing you know, it's going really well. We're actually making some cash flow off of cucumbers and tomatoes. And so the next year we added another farmers market. We expanded into peppers. And so because if you're going to go to a farmers market with cucumbers and tomatoes, we may as well try some peppers. And so oh, Tracy, the pictures aren't necessarily showing up. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Tracy's the tech girl. So anyways, so I was going to farmers markets with cucumbers, tomatoes, and peppers, and so making a little bit more money. And I was okay. You can only post files, and you have to click them and open them, unfortunately. Okay, so if you want to look at some of the pictures of my former farm, that's what Tracy's putting in the chat. Yeah. So anyway, so I was going to farmers markets with cucumbers, tomatoes, and peppers, and then eventually we figured out how to grow lettuce. And so I was bringing some lettuce along to the markets, and some hot peppers, and some eggplant. And so I just added more and more and more items to my table, right? Because if you're going to go with, just the more items you have, the more you can sell. You don't if you don't have it, you can't sell it. And so building on farmers markets. And then one day I looked out the window and I thought, man, we have access to 43 acres of land. What are we going to do with it? And so I decided that we were going to grow a garden, because if you're going to go to a farmer's market with cucumbers, tomatoes, and peppers, you may as well take potatoes, carrots, onions, beets, and the whole 9 yards. So I'll never forget the first year we grew 1 acre of garden, which is that's a fairly good sized garden. And my ex-mother-in-law at the time, she looked out our window onto this garden, this acre of garden, and she said to my ex-husband, she said, "What are you going to do if it doesn't work?" And I'm very tenacious. So eventually, instead of being home with the kids, I was running more and I was doing the markets, because I'm not shy, and, I loved it, and I had to do it for the farm. And so she said, "What are you going to do if it doesn't work?" And my ex-husband looked at my mother-in-law, said, "No, no, no. What's she going to do next year if it does work?" And so we went from 1 acre to 3 acres to 6 acres of garden to 10 acres of garden to eventually up to 15 and 20 acres of garden. And so, yeah, like we just kept expanding and expanding and expanding. And this took several years. Like we started in 2007 was the first year. And we didn't expand into like 20 acres of garden until I don't remember the exact year, but it was probably a good 10 years later. So maybe 27, yeah, probably 2017, 2018 is around when we started really big into the garden. The other thing we did was I was looking around our farmyard, and I'm a very creative business person. So when you're a farmer, and when you are, when margins are tight, right? It's totally tight on a farm. As I'm sure all of you've got your land, you've got your space, and margins are tight. And so I was looking around our farmyard, and we had this old pig barn, and it was just, full of junk, and we weren't really using it and whatever. And I thought, it had it was facing, it was running east west, which means like the big side of the roof was facing south. And I thought, what would happen if we took half that roof off the pig barn, put in a greenhouse, and we actually built a lettuce pond. So, it cost me about $10,000, and it was probably 2018 or 2019 when we did that. And so we ripped half the roof off. It cost us about $10,000 to fix it all up and put the greenhouse roof on. But I grew thousands and thousands and thousands of head. Um, uh, I'm going to get to that. Thousands and thousands and thousands of heads of lettuce out of that. I called it my hippie house because it was ugly. It was so ugly. But it was so functional, and it made us a lot of money. It worked really well. So Lisa said here, our margins are so tight. I have a full-time off the farm to make ends meet. Absolutely, Lisa. Like that is the reality of lots of small farmers. Now, Lisa, I'm curious to know if you are direct marketing everything, or if you're going through the big system. So I want to talk about the big system. So I'll back up for just a second here. So in the big system, we were selling long English cucumbers for wholesale. And so back in the day, cucumbers were being sold for about $7 a dozen is what we would get. And then to the warehouse, and the warehouse would sell to the grocery store for 12. And then the grocery store to the customer would sell at, yeah, the pictures aren't really coming through. So, I mean, maybe we won't worry about the pictures as much then. Anyway, um, okay, so to the store. So the customer, like everyone was taking their piece of the pie, and the farmer was getting dictated the price. And the price wasn't necessarily covering off the bills. That's why I got into farmers markets, is because I realized that I could charge the full $18 to $24 a dozen at farmers markets and get that full amount into my pocket, um which is why I ended up making the farm work for so long. Because like I said, 36,000 square feet of greenhouse was just shy of 1 acre, and it was small. My farm was too small for the wholesale industry, but it was almost by the end it was too big for just the farmers market industry. And we get into bureaucracy in I don't remember what year it was, 2020. No, it wasn't 2020, 2019, 2018. We pulled out of grocery stores because we needed Canada Gap certification in order to go to a grocery store or sell to a grocery store. And it was going to cost me about $7,000 to do about $20,000 worth of sales locally into a couple of stores. And it just didn't make sense. And so then we switched fully into farmers markets. So I got to look at my notes here because I'm just rambling on and on and on. So yeah, so how farmers markets worked is we were getting 100% of that money for our produce back into the farm's pockets. And so we would sell cucumbers. By the end we were selling one item, one bag of tomatoes or peppers or whatever it is, one unit for $6 or 5 units for $25. And it really worked out quite well. When I was at farmers markets, I was grossing. I was doing it depended on the market, but I wouldn't go to a market if I made less than $1,000. That market wasn't good enough for me, and I quit going. Up to my best market that I ever had in one day was I did 9,000 like 9,900 and something. Like I was $50 short of $10,000 in a one-day market. And so yeah, it worked really, really well doing farmers markets. I just want to talk about my stores. So while I'm tenacious, that's the thing you need to know is I'm a businesswoman, I'm a tic-tactician, I run the numbers, I figure it out, like with the hippie house and like with all the different things, planting a garden. I am one to like problem solve. My problem solving skills are here. My reading comprehension is here. My computer skills are here, but my problem solving skills and figuring out where to go in my business is like here or here. And so I went to we were doing the Olds farmers markets, and eventually they ended up putting us inside. So when we were inside the building, I lost money because you don't see it as well. And then they canceled the market a few days. And so I gave the Olds farmers market actually a loss in revenue invoice for $15,000 or something like that. And of course they didn't pay it, but it was to make my point. And that fall, I decided I was going to build my own store. If Olds Farmers Market wasn't going to do it for me, I'm going to go into the town of Olds and build my store myself. And so that's exactly what I did. Kind of like the little redhead. She wanted to make the bread, and she did. And so I started Olds Uptown Market. And so that was my first market, farm to table market store. And so what I was doing in there was I was actually taking products from other people, putting it in my store, farm to table, and I did quite well at that for a long time. Tracy actually worked for me in Olds Uptown Market, and so yeah, it was well. And Tracy worked on the farm as well, and now she's with me doing Dawn's Dirt as well. So yeah, I had a farm to table store, and then I had another farm to table store. So I had two stores, and then so I've got my 20 acres of garden, my 36,000 square foot greenhouse. The farm was generating revenue of about $1 million, 1 million to 1.2 million, depending on the year. And the stores were generating the rest of it. And in 2020, we all know what happened in 2020. We had COVID hit. And 2020 was my best year. So for most of society, 2020 hit, and sales went down and small businesses suffered. But oh, there we go, Tracy. That's my parents' greenhouse. That's where I grew up. So that was about 26,000 square feet. Thanks, Tracy. Anyway, so 2020 hit, and I absolutely capitalized on what was going on. So people were scared to go into buildings, and people were wanting to buy local and things like that. And so I started a food box program. So then I started even buying and selling. Hold on, I got to find my chat back. There we go. I started, great question. I'll get back to that question on my net. So I started doing I started buying and selling produce because I was already kind of doing a little bit of buying and selling and the food box stuff for like I already had my stores, and so I was able to just transfer all of that into online sales. And I went into Calgary and did some online sales. And so I had a crazy, crazy, crazy year. People wanted local. They were cooking at home, and it was one of the best years I've ever had. And I think in 2020, that was the year between all of my stores and all of my farm. I grossed about $2.5 million. And so I had 30 people on payroll, and yeah, it was insane. So the question here is, what would you say your net was on 1 million? So that's the thing in farming and agriculture. You need to know this. The gross number is big and your net number is little. So it and on paper it showed a loss. Like we on paper we made it look like we made this. And so that's part of farming. Is in business you can write things off and you can make it so I lived for I didn't pay like there was a very small amount that we paid personally for our electricity bill and for our that's a picture of the hippie house, for our electricity bill and for our natural gas and things like that. So we lived, our vehicles were kind of covered under the business. And so it looked like personally we made very little to nothing. But I can tell you, even previous to 2020, I took my kids to Cuba a couple times. Like we were doing okay. The cash flow was good. So we're cash flow rich and asset rich, but not cash rich, if that makes sense. And so there's trade-offs. Does that answer your question? Um, yeah. So I want to get into why I had to sell my farm. So I had the farm, and I ended up deciding to leave my ex-husband in 2019, actually. So we were still partners in our business for a while. And I ended up asking, oh, that's my hippie house, more of the hippie house. So I ended up asking, like, leaving my ex-husband and work ethic. I want to talk about work ethic. So on a farm, work ethic is huge. And so we ended up swapping roles on our farm. So he ended up being more of the house dad, and I ended up being more of the like bulldozer, tenacious businesswoman, which is really, really quite hard on marriage. And I don't want to get too much into my marriage, but it was really, really hard. And work ethics. So there were so many things, like hindsight, woulda, coulda, shoulda. He liked to watch a lot of TV. So I would be busting out, going to farmers market, working 14, 16, 18-hour days. So that's something that you need to know going into farming, is you're going to work long days. Like every Thursday right now, I'm putting in a 16-hour day. By the time I drive 2 hours to go to the market, do the market all day, 2 hours home, I still have to come home and do chores. That's part of it. That's what you've got to, just what you've got to do. And so yeah, like work ethic is really, really important. And so we had within our marriage, we had a not a balance of work ethic in our marriage. And so, oh, there's a picture of the greenhouse. So that's one of the rows in the greenhouse. And so we stressed out our plants all the time, and so we picked lots and lots of tomatoes. See the blue bin of tomatoes? We got at least 1 to 2 bins twice a week, picking one row. So it was a great, anyways, it was really fun. So part of the reason I had to sell the farm is I bought him out. He wanted out of the greenhouse, or off the farm and out of the business. So I bought him out. So right there, my first and biggest thing that I would suggest to all of you, if you are married, don't get a divorce. They're very expensive. And we didn't fight, but divorces cost lots of money. So if you can all stay married, go for counseling and try and fix your marriage before you get a divorce, because it might cost you the farm. And so that's part of the reason I don't have the farm anymore. The other reason is inflation hit. And so my costs kept going up and up and up and up. My insurance went up and up and up. I'm having to pay out my ex-husband. That went up and up and up. The interest rates on my mortgage went up and up and up. And so everything just was costing more and I was getting leveraged out. The other issue that I was running into, and I'm just going to call a spade a spade. I was selling predominantly at farmers markets then, but my biggest competition at farmers markets were people that were buying and selling cucumbers, tomatoes, and peppers from the biggest warehouse. So they're buying low and they're selling, they were buying and selling that produce for less money than what I could grow and sell it for. And while I was a very tough competition to them, it still didn't quite do it. And so I ended up having to make the very hard choice of putting the farm up for sale in fall of 2023. And so hindsight 2020, what we should have done in the situation that we were in was we should have gotten bigger. We should have built our 36,000 square foot greenhouse, and we should have built another acre, a year or two later, and then another acre, a year or two later, and another acre, because that's how these big farms are surviving, is our big farms are getting bigger. Now we were creative and we niched down. There's a picture of my greenhouse there. We niched down and we started direct marketing, which made us hold on for a long time. But then, yeah, in 2023, my bills are so high, paying out the ex-husband, carbon tax, all of the things. I just got to fall of 2023 and realized that I was $100,000 short, which again, it isn't that much money, but I knew that I was $100,000 short in order to make all the bills till the next spring. And so that's when I made the hard decision to put it up for sale. It ripped my heart out. And I think that's one mistake that farmers make, is they cling to the farm so hard that they don't make the tic-tac-tician business decision to sell out or to do something different. They'll wait too long. And so I was able to sell my farm for 1.165 million, 1,165,000. And by the time I paid out my ex-husband and paid off the debt, yeah, I was left with a couple $100,000. And so but I was left with something. I didn't go bankrupt. And that's a business decision. And that's the thing you need to know about farming, is you have to make tic-tac-tician. You have to know your numbers and you have to make tic-tac-tician business decisions. Yeah. So I talked about debt. I'm just going to my notes here. Oh, and I don't have the chat up. I want to make sure, if y'all have questions, put them in the chat. It's good if we, I love questions. So I made the business decision to sell. And so then I got my first job last summer, working for an agriculture institution. And I was just a sales clerk. And I thought, man, I'm just going to get a job and I'm not going to have the stress load and I'm not going to have all the things and working for someone else. But I can tell you this, when you're an entrepreneur, because if you've got a chunk of land and and you want to create a business on it, you're an entrepreneur. You're now a business. You need to treat it like a business. You need to think like a business owner, and you need to know your numbers and make smart decisions. And so I went to go work for this agricultural institution, and I've got such a strong personality. I actually got fired, and then I got another job and I got fired again because I call out bullshit. And so I realized last fall that I'm unemployable. I am unemployable. I've been in business, worked for myself, been the boss, for so many years, the last 20 something years, that I need to not work for someone else. And so I thought to myself, how can I just get back into farming? Because when I sold my farm, I actually bought a hat and it said, "It's in my blood." And yeah, I that's who I am. That's fundamentally who I am, is a farmer. And so I'm thankful I landed in the country. So I bought a mobile home here in the country. It's on a piece of land that I rent. So I own my house. I don't own the land, but I have access to about an acre. And I thought, what can I do? How can I make some money? And back when we had the farm, we had chickens. And so we did eggs. And so I knew And I tic-tac-ticianed the math out, and I just took a risk, and I bought 150 laying hens this fall, and I got 700, actually it'll be 800 meat birds by the time I'm done. But then there's some loss, right? It's farming, you lose a few, but I'll have about 700 meat birds that I'll sell. And yeah, it's been the best decision for me. And the nice thing about it is where I landed, I have no debt. So the hardest part with my farm is my debt load. My debt load was so high. And so that's where, back to Lisa, I think it was, you're working a job to pay your farm, but hopefully that makes it so that your debt load can be managed so that you can farm on the side. And so yeah, I started into my chicken journey, and so I got 150 laying hens, and I've got these meat birds, and I went to my first farmer's market, and I should have ordered 200. I had my farming and agriculture and business is all, and being an entrepreneur, you're gambling. It's a bit of gambling. It's high roller gambling. That's what I used to always say. I'm I'm not. I used to say I'm not going. I don't go to Vegas to gamble. I don't need to go to Vegas to gamble because I'm a high roller all year round. And so I got all these animals. And I went to the first farmers market, and boom, I sold out of eggs, and I sold my eggs at $10 a dozen this year. And I was a little nervous about selling up. To me, that's a high price, but they sold out. And so consistently right now at the one farmers market that I'm doing, I'm selling out of eggs by 3 hours, 3 hours before the market's over, which is really quite cool. Hold on, I'm a little like a squirrel. So I just want to explain about this picture. So this is the hippie house. So you can see the back end is the north end. And so we kept that part of the pig barn there. And then we put the both sides on, and then see all the concrete there. We built a concrete pond. And so that's a pond. And so we filled that with about a foot of water, and then we put lettuce in it. So I coach on that. I teach people how to grow in the spaces they have in the spring. So where was I? Like a squirrel. So I'm not allowed to garden. That's the thing. I ended up on this space. I could I'm not allowed to, as part of my sales clause. So when I sold the farm, it came with a non-compete clause. So I am actually not allowed to grow and sell vegetables in the province of Alberta for 5 years. That's my non-compete clause. Because if I were to grow vegetables and set up a farmer's market next to my former farm, like, I'd slaughter them. I just know how to do it. I've got, 30 years of experience. So yeah, so I'm not allowed to do that. So that's why I got into chickens. And that's the thing with it too. So I'm not allowed to do vegetables. So I'm missing out on a whole portion of income that I could make off my space. So when you're thinking about your space, when you think about you've got access to animals and gardens and things like that. So there's lots of opportunity because you guys don't have the non-compete clause. And so yeah, so I got into chickens, but I don't have a lot of money. And so I thought, and I didn't want to put up a big barn and things like that. So I just got creative. And that's the thing about farming, is it doesn't have to be perfection. And sometimes you have to take your ideologies. If you take one thing out of this masterclass today, take your ideologies about organics or about barns or about space or about land or about sales or about anything. Take your ideologies, the things that it has to be done this way. Take that all and throw it out the window, because sometimes you got to just do what you got to do for the farm. And I'm not saying that you should do bad things or you should lie to people or do anything unethical, but take your ideologies. If you're going to take one thing from this masterclass today and nothing else, take your ideologies and throw them out the window. Yeah, that's really important to know. So yeah, so so what I did was, and I don't know if I can even sure, why don't we try this? So that was my chicken house at my old farm. But here, I'm gonna see if I can show you. So if you look out here, can you see that? So I just have a couple of sheds and some tarp sheds. That's all I've got. I thought, how can I shelter these chickens? And so I put up tarp sheds. Like, I bought tarp sheds from Canadian Tire, and I put up tarp sheds because, again, like the hippie house, I'm just doing it on a tight budget. Like I'm doing this, on a tight budget to try and make the most money possible. And yeah, it's working. $10 so I want to talk about competition. Hold on, I'm going to talk about competition in 1 second. I want to answer this question first. Do you process your own birds? No, I do not. So there is bureaucracy. Oh, that's my little greenhouse that I have now. That's just me playing for fun. So I there is a thing called bureaucracy, and so I am falling within the bureaucracy. I know how to play the rules, and I know how to um follow the rules with, but still doing what I need to do for my farm. And so I'm getting them butchered at a Hutter rate, is what I'm doing right now, because that's what Alberta Health Services requires me to do, and I'm able to do it. And honestly, I don't really want to process all those birds myself. They do it so fast, so efficiently, and it's just so much per bird, and I get them back, and then I can sell them. Okay, so we're Oh, pricing and competition. That's what I was going to talk about. Pricing and competition. So even when I had my farm, my vegetables weren't cheap. They weren't cheap. They were priced probably on the higher end, and because the quality was on the higher end. And so this year I had a competitor at the farmers market. I showed up and he knew I was going to have eggs. Excuse me. And he walks up to me the first market and he said, "How much are you going to sell your eggs for?" And I said, $10 a dozen. And he said, "Okay, well, I'll do that as well." And eventually, oh, there's a picture of my booth at the farmers market when I had vegetables. So he was like, "Okay, well, I'll do mine at $10 a dozen." Well, I found out after the fact he's selling his at $9 a dozen, and I don't think he sells out. Then he comes to me a couple weeks later and he says, "You're doing meat as well?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm doing meat chickens." And he said, "Well, how much are you selling those for?" And I said, I don't know yet, because I don't know what my costs are, right? Because you have to tactician it out. You have to know what your numbers are. And he said, "Well, I'm selling mine for 6.50 a pound. So I hope you're not going to sell for anything less than 6.50 a pound." And I and I'm selling at $7 a pound. And my first batch of chickens is I have two left in my freezer, and I'm sold out, basically sold out. And my next batch goes in on Wednesday to get butchered. So, how do I transport them? I'm actually going to go down to the Hutterite and pick up some crates and bring them back to my place here, and load, and then bring them back down the next morning. Um, yeah. So where am I at with this? Pricing and competition. Yeah. So I'm higher in price, but I'm out competing him in sales. I know I am. And there's several reasons for that. I'm a pretty outgoing person, and yeah, lots of other reasons, but and I'm known at that farmers market. People are recognizing me from before when I had my farm. And but there's lots of tricks and things to the trade. There's ways to get higher sales, there's ways to make more money, there's ways to ask more money, there's ways to conversations that you can have with your customers to build that relationship. Yeah, so I'm doing all right, and this year I will gross between 25 to 30 grand. And I think my net, because the net question came up earlier, the net question on this place as opposed to my former farm. So on my former farm, I mean, if I did one or $2.5 million, I probably net, 100 grand maybe, or 50 grand, or I don't know, not a lot, but enough that we had a very comfortable living. It was fine. But by the time I paid the mortgage and the vehicles and the insurance and the blah 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 blah, blah, there was not a lot of meat left on the bone. But because I was doing this much in sales, there was meat left on the bone. Now, fast forward to this place, because I don't have debt, because I don't have a mortgage, because I don't have rent. Well, I have to mow the lawn and pay the electrical bill, but I basically don't have rent. This chicken business that I'm doing in my backyard right now is not costing me crazy amounts of things. And so the profits are a little bit higher. The other thing is I threw my ideologies of organics out the window. Now, I'm not saying organics is wrong. Organics has its time and place. I've done organic feed before. When I had the farm, I grew without pesticide unless certified organic product is used. I know how to grow organically. I know what organics is. Like an ideology, like ideally, we would all have organic. Absolutely. I'm with you 100%. So if you're on the organic bandwagon, I'm with you. I agree with you. I like it. But for me, I made the business decision this year with my chickens to just feed conventional feed, because I know when I've done organics in the past, my feed costs went up and my production went down because they just weren't getting quite the right things that they need. And so I'm selling it as farm fresh eggs. I'm just selling. And am I honest with people? Absolutely. Have a few people walked away from my eggs because they're not organic? Yep, but that's okay. That's okay. You know, I'm doing what I need to do for my family, and it's good food. And I tell people all the time, there's a big difference between a chicken that I've raised and a chicken that you buy in the grocery store. Or if you're eating chicken, period, it's still a better decision than craft dinner, you know? And so that's how you work the customers. That's how, like, that's where our food system needs to go, is we need to less grocery store and we need more farm to table, which is why I'm here. And so, yeah, we need to take our ideologies and kind of, evaluate them and figure out what's going to work for the farm and what's going to work for the customer and what's going to work best for everybody, which brings it around to customers and relationship. That is how I built I call it my empire. When I had two stores, at the height of my empire, I had two farm to table stores. I did food truck frenzies. I ran my own farmers market, and I had my farm. And I was doing online sales and all the whole 9 yards. And what it came back to was relationship. In 2020, I had people coming up to me because they were scared. 2020, 2021, you have food, right? Yep, I have food. And that's where we need to go. He who controls the food controls the people. And so we need to take our food system back. And that's where all of you come into play. If you've got a piece of dirt and you've got a little piece of land, you can do this. You can find your community, build your relationships, and change our food system. So all the people on the call here and all the people that are going to listen to the recording of this, you have the power to change our world and change our food system. And so, yeah, like, I'm so excited for you in your next steps. And so I'm assuming that all of you want to get into business. Throw it in the chat. Do you want to get into a little business? Do you want to make some money off of your homestead? That's a question. Just put yes in the chat if that's what you want to do. If you want to make money off your homestead, if you want to build community, there we go. Yes. If we want to build community, we want to build relationships, and we want to build, see, there we go. Yes, yes, yes. And educate. I love it, Tracy. And educate. That's why I'm doing this. And so for me, I'm going to double my sales next year. I'm going to double my chicken production. I'm going to figure out how to use my space even more smart and even more effective. And I'm gonna build more relationships and have more and do more farm to table sales. Also, in the process of this, I think there's a bigger there's a bigger thing with me. It broke my heart to sell my farm, but I was damn good at what I did. And I'm not trying to be cocky. I'm just confident in it. I made mistakes. Absolutely. Could I tell you 50 things that I would do differently next time around? Absolutely. But I can tell you the 50 things that I did right as well. And I feel like where I'm headed next is to teach people like you how to do this on your spaces. I can help you. I know how to. I just did it this year. I'm doing 30 grand off of half an acre here. And so I know how to do this, and I want to teach more people how to do this, because at the end of the day, we don't need more big farms. We need more small farmers like you. And so that's what I do. I'm helping small farmers and small homesteads create money and cash flow off of their spaces to build their communities and their food system. So this is where I want to throw it out there. If you're interested, I am a homestead business coach. And so jump on, I'm going to put a link in the comments, or Tracy can put a link in the comments. There it is. So if you go to that link tree, it's a lot about gardening on there. So I do garden coaching in the spring. But I also know I've got clients right now. I had a client out west of Bearberry, and she followed some of my advice this spring, and boom, she's had the best year she's ever had in her business. And so that's what I'm doing. So if you want to jump on a free jumpstart call, I would love to talk to all of you. If you're listening, or if you're listening to the recording, I want to talk to you, and I want to figure out where your farm can go. So if you I just want to hear about your space that you have, your goals, hopes, and dreams, and I can tell you which direction in a free jumpstart call. So it's free. So book on the link that Tracy put up there. Book on the link. Book a free jumpstart call. I'm going to take half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour of my time for free for you to talk about where your farm is going next or where your homestead is going next, and I will give you what I think the direction is that you should go. And so if you want to book that, the link is there, book it, and let's chat and let's have more small farmers. I'm so excited for all of you. And so book in the link. Yeah. I think that's all I wanted to talk about today. Now I would love to open the floor up. Does anyone have any questions? And so put it in the chat, or even if someone wants to be brave and unmute and ask me a question, that would be amazing. I see one question here from Jose, I think. Do I sell chicken manure? I haven't sold chicken manure, but I do have a business client in BC. I'm helping them with farm to table sales, and they are going to sell rabbit poop, rabbit manure, and rabbit tea. And so they put a few pellets and they dried some pellets and things like that. And so that is an option. I haven't sold the chicken manure because it's my first year doing chickens here. So I haven't sold manure yet, but it is a great option. It's all those value added things. Value added on the farm is really important. When I had my farm, the leftovers, I canned things. I sold jars of stuff and then built the stores. Any other questions? Does someone want to unmute and ask a question?
I do. Hello.
Hi, Mary.
Hi. Good job, lady. I'm so proud of you for doing this. My
Thank
question
you.
is, my question is, with tomatoes, I told you when we talked on the podcast that we were going to have tons of tomatoes. Tomatoes
Yeah.
are ripening up. Yay.
Yeah.
How do we price tomatoes? How do we gauge the price of tomatoes?
Well, you need to figure out how much time they took, what the cost was for the seed, what the cost was for all of it, and then you need to price them. The other thing is you need to go into the grocery store and see what tomatoes are priced like in there, and then price higher. I have done my homework, and I've gone into the grocery stores and figured out what the price of chicken is, and I've upped it because my chicken's better. Your tomatoes are going to be better than anything you find in a grocery store. So you figure out what the grocery store price is. You also figure out the time and the effort. And if you got, I had staff payroll just on my farm alone in 2020 was $500,000, so that's a cost. And then your fuel and all the expenses, and then you price your tomatoes accordingly. When I priced my chicken this year, I figured out what my feed costs were, and then I figured out what I felt my time was worth, and I priced accordingly. And so, does that answer the question?
It does. So I got one more for you. Do we price them by the pound or do we price them by the tomato?
All depends on where you're selling. So if you're
Okay.
selling to restaurants, or you're selling to um if you're selling to restaurants, or you're selling at a farmer's market, or you're selling, it depends on where you're selling, to a grocery store, that's an option as well. And I can coach on that as well. Yeah, it just depends on where you're selling. I like to sell per unit at a farmer's market. So Tracy just said, in my experience at the market, people will absolutely pay for more for local quality and relationship with the grower. And that is so true. And even in my store, they paid a bit more, higher prices, because they really want to support local. And it is true local. When you see a store like Walmart put up a sign that says buy local, and what they mean by local is, so I'm in Canada, they mean a local, I don't know, potato grower from PEI, but I'm in Alberta. That's their version of local. That's not local. Local is your community, your friends and neighbors, and that's where our food system needs to start. So, is that helpful?
It is. Thank you so much for doing this.
No problem. No problem. Yeah, book a call if you need to, for sure. Absolutely. And thanks for being on my podcast. I want to throw out your podcast for 1 second. So you are a tiny homestead, right?
A Tiny Homestead podcast. Yep.
Yes, I love it. I love it. You've been on my podcast and I've been on yours. It's perfect. Great relationship. Any more questions? Is there anyone on here that um anyone else that has any more questions? Do you coach on other types of farm income types? Yes. So what do you mean by that? Tina, do you mind to unmute?
Yeah, I'm just wondering because, like, for a while I did YouTube and I did a lot of canning. And, like, I know you're really good on the greenhouse and the market gardening and all that stuff. Husband and I have injuries right now that we're pampering. So, like, the garden is not as, it's a mess right now. But we do, like, I do a lot of other stuff. And I'm just wondering, and I also have some fiber animals. Like, are you just mostly greenhouse garden stuff? Or, like, are there other types of farms, like, that you would be able to coach?
Absolutely, any type of farm. So some of my clients right now, my current clients are doing different types of farms. So some are doing some market garden stuff, but another one is a nursery, and she's doing other like farm to table, store type stuff. And so I can coach on anything, because really what it comes down to is the business side of it, the tic-tac-tician, what's going to make you money, what's going to save you money, knowing your numbers, how to do sales and marketing, where the best place is to find customers. So all of the above. I used to go to farmers markets. And again, I'm not trying to be cocky. I'm just really trying to be very honest with you. I used to go to I did farmers. I ran a farmers market in Calgary for a couple of years. I would see a vendor. So whether they sold kombucha or vegetables or canning or crocheting or whatever it was, I could figure out who's going to make it in business and who's not. And so not everybody's going to make it in business. And so that's where I come in, is I teach you, and I see your blind spots. I see the places that you're not looking, and I help you through those. And when I have a coaching client come on, or take on a coaching client or business client, I'm very brutally blunt and honest and truthful, but I view it as we're really partnering. You and I are partnering, as not a partnership, like it's not that kind of partnership, but your success is my success, and I want to see you thrive. And so, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Because, like, I've got a lot of ideas in my head, but I'm still in my head. So like,
Right. And
yeah, that, and I can't get out of my head, right? So that's where I need someone
and
to say, okay, this is what you should do. Because I'm good at,
yeah,
I'm okay at a lot of different things. We've grown our own meat birds. We have some animals and stuff like that. I've grown flowers. I've grown gardens. Struggling a little bit because of the way our property is set up. And
yeah.
so, like, I've grown way more food in Calgary in my, postage stamp backyard. And so I'm just struggling. Am I doing something wrong? How do I make, like, if I wanted to make an income off the property, other than, like, I was doing YouTube, and right before I hit the
It- it-
4,000 watch hours, I had the subscribers. I just stopped. And that's the kind of stuff,
oh,
like, that I tend to do. I, like, sabotage myself, and I want to be successful, but I know I cannot do market gardening. I just can't. I've got a lot of kids at home. That's just, uh,
and you don't need to. You
yeah.
don't need to, but that's the thing. That's where I come in, is we have the conversation. We go through all of your strengths and weaknesses. We go through all of this is what's going on, this is what's going on, and we come up with a plan together tailored to you. So my coaching is not based on, like, overall this is what I would do, la la la. No, it's you. I'm invested in you and your family and your children and your backyard and your space, and whatever that is. And so if that's canning, or if that's, you know, tallow, or anything like that, it's based on you. It's business coaching. It's not. And we take those things that are in your head, and we talk them through, and we tic-tac-tician them through, and then we come up with a plan together. That's what's important, is coming up with the plan together, and you and I can come up with that plan together. So book the call, Tina. You're an ideal person. Let's book the call, and on that call we will come up with a direction together. Any thoughts, Tina? Or okay, perfect. Thanks, Tina. Any more questions? Does anyone else have a question on the call here today? Hey, I love this. I could talk business and farm to table and small business, and all the things I can coach on: farm stands, stores, farm to table stores. This is my experience, and I'm very honest. If I don't have experience in something, I either don't do it, or I have access to people that can help me through that. So Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. Really appreciate your time. Look forward to chatting with you, and book your Jumpstart call so that we can get your farm to table businesses rolling and going. And I'm so excited for all of you. So thanks so much for your time today. Okay. Bye, everyone.